Mark Matthews, head of Asia Research at Bank Julius Baer, joins us this morning from Singapore. Mark, good to have you back on the program. So not finding much direction for Asia-Pacific markets. Is this pretty much what we're going to see for the rest of this year?
Susan, the direction is looking increasingly bearish. In fact, technicians point out that the S&P is close to so-called death cross, which sounds really nasty, doesn't it? It's when the 50-day moving average drops below the 200-day. And in fact, that already happened on the FTSE, and the MSCI Asia ex-Japan Index looks very similar. So that's one thing. And actually, if you also look at the S&P back over the last 3 years, just in the past week, we've broken through a very nice upward support line. So the technicals look poor, but I think really it depends on the severity of the U.S. economy, in my opinion, because if we go into something like the global financial crisis, all bets are off. Of course, Asia will be taken down. But I just think back to the savings and loans crisis and how, in fact, that attracted a whole bunch of money out here to Asia 20 years ago, even though we were more reliant on exports back then than we are now, because people were looking to diversify away from Western markets.
Well, Mark, why are you using the term global financial crisis once again? I thought we already got out of that a few years ago.
I'll tell you why. It's actually not so much the U.S. that concerns me. It's Europe and what's happening particularly in the Italian 10-year government bonds. I think they've gone up from like 4.5% to over 6% just in the past month. So I personally had thought the Europeans had put a sort of cap on their problem a few weeks ago with the EU Ministers' Summit, and clearly that was wrong. So I think Europe is something very big out there still that's really difficult to put a view on, and could potentially increase the risk further.
What about risk in the U.S.? You know, we've been talking about these economic data points that continues to disappoint the market. What do you think? Is QE3 in the cards? Double dip? What do you think?
I suspect that if we do go into a double dip scenario, there will be some form of monetary stimulus. And that's why, actually, talking about the death cross, we had one of those in July of last year, and it would have been wrong to get all bearish, because then the next month, in August, the Fed started setting out signals about QE2, and in fact, the markets went on a tear in the third and fourth quarters of last year. So a lot of it is policy, and that's why I try to find things which I think don't have as much to do with policy to invest in.
Yeah, it sounds like you're pretty cautious right now, Mark. So what should investors get into to be cautious and defensive?
Susan, I'd like to make a plug for what I think is one of the best brands in the world, which is McDonald's. And McDonald's is an interesting chart. I don't know if you've got time to pull it up, but if you look at McDonald's going back around 5 years, you'll see that it actually didn't fall during the global financial crisis. So it was a very, very unusual stock. And the reason for that is because it's a defensive staple in the U.S. and Europe. Basically, the poorer you get, the more McDonald's you eat. And it's an exciting growth stock in the rest of the world. And their revenues are about 30 U.S., 30 Europe, 30 rest of the world. Dividend yield is about 3.5%. Stock's on 16 times. They're sprucing up their stores in the U.S. The McCafes are doing really well, taking away market share from Starbucks. But also, China's just 3% of earnings. So, I mean, there's tons more growth left for McDonald's in the emerging world.
Oh, wow. I didn't peg you for a Big Mac quarter pounder, large fries kind of guy, Mark. Okay, so people usually get into defensive stocks like utilities and also healthcare, but you're advocating some really fat-laden stocks.
Unfortunately, well, it's nice that with the Happy Meals they're putting in apples now, and the McCafes, and you can have a salad. But yeah, you're right. It is fast food.
I'm wondering if you're the man under the red wig as the clown. Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Mark Matthews joining us from Singapore.